There was a boy once. His name was Micah. He wasn't born angry. He didn't come into the world broken or bitter. He began like most kids, curious, wide-eyed, always asking questions, and painting dreams in every color he could imagine. But the world didn't set care, not in the way a child like Micah needed. His father came home late, full of shouting and fury. His mother slipped away into quiet, more ghost than guardian. So Micah learned to walk softly, memorizing which floorboards creaked, like they were traps ready to snap. At the dinner table, there was no warmth, just cold eyes and sharp words. Arguments exploded like grenades, but no one ever picked up the pieces. No one ever said, sorry. What broke Micah wasn't set, just the pain. It was the silence around it, the fake smiles in public, the pretending that everything was fine when everything was falling apart. No one ever said, this isn't set normal, this isn't set okay. That lie, the lie that nothing was wrong, was the real damage. Because the human mind can survive a lot, but it can't heal what it's forced to deny. Trauma doesn't just sit quietly in memory, it sinks into the body. It rewires how you feel, how you see people, how you see yourself. It teaches a child that they aren't safe, aren't enough, aren't even real. And slowly, Micah grew up. So did the mask. He became likable, quick with a joke, always reading the room, adjusting, shape-shifting to fit what others needed. People loved him, but inside, he was empty. Like a house with lights on but no one home. The outside looked fine, but inside, the walls were scorched and the air was thick with smoke. That's what unspoken trauma does. It splits you. You smile while breaking. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived lives of the parents." Micah didn't just inherit his parents' DNA, he inherited their silence, their fear, their unfinished pain. He didn't lose his mind in one moment. It happened in pieces. First came the sleepless nights, that constant feeling that something was wrong, even on calm days. Then came the mistrust, the anger, the shame. He couldn't believe in anyone, not even himself. Every relationship felt like walking through a minefield. He pushed people away before they could hurt him, but then begged them not to leave. Love felt like war, and Micah was both the attacker and the victim. He tried seeing a therapist once. He said he felt numb, that his dreams were all broken, that some mornings he'd look in the mirror and not recognize his own reflection. They gave it a name: anxiety, depression, but a label couldn't touch the thing hiding under it all, the wound no one ever let him speak. Because trauma doesn't disappear when ignored. It hides, it waits, it rots, and one day, it shows up. Maybe in a breakdown, maybe in addiction, maybe in the sudden silence of someone who used to laugh the loudest. Micah started talking to himself, not daydreaming, but full-on conversations, arguments, screams. He'd stare through mirrors, like he wasn't there. He carried around a notebook, filling it with thoughts that no one else could understand. People said he was different, but here rests the truth. He wasn't changing. He was just tired of faking it. And that's what no one tells you about losing your mind. It doesn't feel like going crazy. It feels like finally telling the truth. It is not madness. It's sex exhaustion. It's the soul finally laying down its mask after carrying too much for too long. When someone spends their whole life hiding their pain, burying their fears, their trauma, something inside begins to crack. The human mind isn't a machine. It's a fragile weave of memories, emotions, beliefs, and meaning. And when that weave is soaked in too much silence and suffering, it starts to tear. Micah began hearing voices, not loud or strange at first, but whispers he couldn't ignore. He started seeing signs in places no one else noticed. Billboards, streetlights, glances from strangers. He believed they were messages, clues, not symbols, not metaphors. Real. He thought the universe was speaking directly to him. What was really happening? His mind, desperate for order, was building meaning from the chaos. It was trying to explain what had never been processed. That's the cruel thing about unresolved trauma. It doesn't sit quietly. It follows you, dresses up as anxiety, shows up as anger, or disguises itself as mystical insight. But under all of that, a child screaming, "See me, help me, please." But by the time anyone notices, it's already too late. Because the world doesn't understand suffering when it's invisible. It fears it, mocks it, turns it into a headline, a warning, a whisper in the dark. Micah didn't lose himself because he was fragile. He unraveled because he was strong for too long. Some people call it madness, but Carl Jung had another word for it: individuation, the journey of becoming whole by facing the darkest parts of yourself. But for Micah, it didn't feel like some heroic path. It felt like drowning, like being pulled into a deep, ancient ocean, one that didn't speak in words, only in fragments, symbols, screams behind locked doors. Here sets what no one tells you. You don't lose your mind all at once. It starts small, like a hairline crack in a mirror, and over time, it spreads, quietly. From the outside they still say, "He snapped." But they didn't see the nights he didn't sleep, the days he smiled while breaking, the times he begged for help without making a sound. Because when you bury the past, you don't erase it, you multiply it. Unhealed trauma becomes a ghost, and ghosts don't die, they haunt. Micah wasn't just haunted by memories. He was carrying the full weight of years of abandonment, shame, confusion, and grief that had no name. All those moments, he stayed silent as a child. They screamed back at him when he became a man. This is where the line between sanity and insanity begins to blur. Psychologists call it the false self, the version of you created not to live, not to thrive, but to survive. It tells people what they want to hear. It wears masks so well that even you forget who you are underneath. But the truth you buried, it remembers. And one day, the mask cracks. The performance ends. And what is left? The shadow, the part you tried to ignore, the rage you said wasn't yours, the sorrow you never named. That sits, not madness. That hits a soul finally breaking its silence. It is not just sadness, it's grief, the kind you told yourself didn't matter. The voice deep down that whispered, you were never loved the way you needed to be. That is what people call going crazy, but it sets not illness. It sets not evil. It is not even irrational. It's the mind cracking under the pressure of pretending. Madness is the soul sep's rebellion, a scream from the parts of you that have been silenced for too long. And strangely, it sets also an opportunity, because when everything breaks, when the lies collapse, when the mask shatters, when nothing makes sense anymore, you are finally left with one thing: the truth. But truth isn't spirited pretty. Micah Sep's truth was this: he was abused, he was neglected, He was never truly seen, and for years he told himself it didn't certain matter, but it did. It always did. Carl Jung once said, "Healing begins the moment the unconscious becomes conscious." That means facing your darkness, not avoiding it. That sits where redemption begins. But here, set is the hard part. Looking into your past means feeling it all. Everything you tried so hard not to feel, and that sits terrifying. Because beneath the numbness, beneath the madness, is something even scarier. Vulnerability. To face your shadow, you have to become soft again. You have to grieve. And grief is its own kind of death. Micah started writing, not to make sense of it, not to heal, just to get it out. The pages were messy. Scribbles, drawings, sometimes the same sentence written over and over. I didn't deserve this. And that changed him. Not because it brought peace, but because it gave him something else. Permission. Permission to feel, to be angry, to be sad, to stop pretending. And in that storm of emotion, he found something he hadn't touched in years. Hope. Healing doesn't start with motivation or positivity. It starts with honesty, and honesty begins in pain. Micah returned to therapy, but this time, he didn't try to sound wise or enlightened. He didn't instead hide behind jokes or insight. He just cried. He cried for the child who grew up too fast, for the adult who never felt safe, for the madness that made perfect sense once he stopped running from it. He wasn't set cured, but he wasn't set lost anymore either, because Micah finally saw what madness really was. Not a curse, not a failure, but a message, a cry from deep within, from the parts of him that had been locked away for years. And when he finally opened the door, those parts didn't attack him. They thanked him, because now he was finally listening. If you ever felt like you were losing your mind, if the world feels too loud and you feel too broken, please hear this. You are not broken. You are buried. And healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the pain taught you to forget. So where do you start? With silence. Not the silence of shutting down, but the sacred kind, the silence of listening. Write, walk, scream, cry, but do it awake. Do it without shame. And read, not just books on symptoms. Read what speaks to the soul. The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert A. Johnson. The Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Miller. Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung. These aren't just books. They serve mirrors. They once hand you answers, but they still give you the right questions. And most of all, don't heal to be perfect, heal to be real. So one day, when you look in the mirror, you shall finally recognize the person staring back. Because this world doesn't need more masks. It needs more people who have walked through the fire of their shadow and come back carrying the light.